Okay, give me that one more time.
So when I managed to get out of the forward cabin, the forecastle, and as we're getting pummeled and time compression kicked in, where a few seconds seemed like a few minutes, I looked at the ink black water as the boat was getting pushed under, and I gave the order to abandon ship. It sounded like a whisper when I said it, but I'm sure it was a yell. And I don't know who was listening to me or if I was just trying to tell myself that this is what we're doing. And I jumped off the side of the boat in the middle of the night, and it was ink black November water 20 miles offshore. And the boat got pushed under, and the barge, I pushed off the barge, and it just sailed away, and I was just treading water. And the only thing that I think saved me was just pure, unadulterated, raw rage. I was mad as a hornet, and I screamed every cuss word you could think of. I was just pissed. I wasn't scared in the slightest. I was angry. And that saved me, and the boat started sinking. And the day before, the owner's wife made him put a hydrostatic release escape pod on this thing, because the owner's wife, named Brenda, who the boat was named after, but they had misspelled her name on the transom, Brinda. I'll never forget that, and that's historically very bad luck to misspell a boat name.
Well, to spell your wife's name, I imagine, is its own kind of bad luck.
Yeah, and I got to the bow, and the bow section that was sinking was hissing really loud with all the air coming out. So like the demons hissing, basically, as this thing was sinking, crippled and sinking. And I got to the escape pod that was kind of floating in there, and this is ink black, so you're just feeling around. And I pulled on every cord I could find. It was just all wrapped up, and it just exploded. Those things are really violent. They just, boom, they're really extreme when they go off. And then they overinflate. So it goes boom, and it inflates, and then it keeps making this sound for about a minute to make sure it's tight, but that sound also acts as a beacon. And so I slid in this thing, and I thought everybody else was dead. And the boat, was it still attached to the raft? It started pulling the raft down. I couldn't release it. And by some miracle, the one guy had followed me in, and a second guy had followed me in, and they popped up. One of them was my old dive mentor, this burly man named Mike, who taught me everything, especially about artificial reefs early in the day. And the other was this young kid, also named Chris, and he had never been on the water in his life. And they found this raft, but there were still two other people that were missing, a father and daughter. They were the owners. And I got in this thing, and I said, well, we're going to have to bail out now. And Mike had watched the video, and there was like a little pickle knife that was hidden in some Ziploc bag over the arched doorway. And he found this knife this big in the middle of the night, and he cut the line. And you could see the bow of the boat in the phosphorescence just flutter. It was gone. And then, we're in there doing our thing, and 10, 15, 20 minutes, I don't know how long, 2 minutes, I don't know what the time was. You could hear this faint female voice off in the distance, and it was the owner's daughter named Jessica. She was 15 years old. Her and her dad had managed to get life jacket. He put a life jacket on her as the boat was going down, and they hugged each other, and as a joined unit, they pinballed underneath this 300-foot barge and came out the other end, thinking the whole time they were going to die. We all thought it was a ship. We didn't know that it was essentially a drone. And there's nobody on those barges. They're unmanned. They're towed by a tugboat 900 meters to the north.
The tugboat didn't pick up on any of this?
No, they just listened to music, whatever. The Coast Guard sure had something to say about that when they caught up with them the next day. Because there's no such thing as a no-fault accident at sea. Everything is an assignment of blame. It's not like a car accident. There were scrapes all the way down the side of the barge. And that accident is actually kind of in West Coast tug and tow legend. You can talk to anybody in that industry. They all remember what happened. And the daughter got in, and then she heard her dad off in the distance saying, help, I'm over here. And she jumped back in the water. and pulled him in. So anyway, that started I don't know how, all the way until the next morning, lighting off flares, freezing to death, 5 people swirling around in a big pool of blood all night, basically. There was no food or water in this thing, and nothing to suspend you, just a thin layer. And it was my job to stand outside and try to wave boats down 20 miles off away, and nobody came. And one of the flares was a dud. And
Where were you guys when the boat went down?
somewhere between 8 and 17 miles west of Point Loma, something like that. And finally, you could just see the sun coming up. It was one of those east wind days where you could just tell the wind was going to howl out of the east. The real bright orange morning, and you could see the orangeness starting over Tijuana way off in the distance. And I lit off the last flare because I saw a boat going, and we were really cold and hungry and confused and couldn't talk right and couldn't move our arms, and the boat just kept going. I was holding this stupid flare that came out. The boat just kept going. And before I went back inside to tell them, sorry guys, make your peace. Before I could do that, this little black dot came up through the remaining smoke train of the flare. I'm like, well, what is that? And it was a rigid hold inflatable, and it was the U.S. Border Patrol. And the guy, he saw the smoke, he didn't see the flare. And we had just invaded Afghanistan, so they had a lot of hardware on the border, exclusion situation, right? I think it was maybe just 2 weeks after that invasion started. And I'll never forget this. We're 5 white folks in a raft floating around, and the first thing the Border Patrol guy asked us wasn't, "Are you okay?" The first thing he asked us was, "What's your nationality?" And if I had it to do over again, I would have said, "Thanks for saving us, buddy. Yeah, we're 5 Canadians that missed the mark by 1,500 miles. We were trying to illegally immigrate," but I'll never forget that. And that started what became a 20-year process of building the Fisheries Project from nothing. And there was no roadmap for what we've done.
Hold on.
Yeah.
So you spoke about some promises that you made.
Yeah, it's hard for me to talk about without tearing up, to tell you the truth, but I'll do my best. It's still a very emotional thing. That for however many minutes passed, when I was treading water. The thoughts. It wasn't a compartmentalized thought. It was in the water, and then when the hypothermia sets in, and your body starts to kind of give off its life force. You're preparing for death, and your body is going through a chemical change when that happens, and I think that some people would probably, start to pray. They would probably, there's no atheists in foxholes. I'll never forget the owner crossed himself, and he's never been to church for a day in his life. And he goes, "I just doubled the insurance on my boat." And that's where my thoughts went. Was about the amount of extraction I've done in the ocean in my life, which I don't feel bad about. The amount of fish that I've taken to feed myself, and to as a sport and commercial fisherman, and as a seafood trader, I pioneered what is now known as the sustainable seafood movement. I actually pioneered that entire thing while I was still in college. So I've always been environmentally minded, but I've always defended man's right to get their food from the ocean, and I still do. But something inside me wanted to balance that equation. I think I was 30 years old at the time when that happened. And I didn't know what it was. I just wanted to balance that equation. I wanted to create a system that allowed the ocean to thrive and become healthy, and to create more life in the ocean, or allow the ocean to create more of its own life through some mild interventions, that more than offsets not only my own impact and what I've taken from the ocean, but as many other people, as much of humanity as possible. So that was the trade-off, that if I could live, that I would essentially do nothing but that one thing for the rest of my life.
That's beautiful, Chris.
Yeah.